Hello, everybody. Oh, I've got the sun coming just in through the window, about to set on a lovely, lovely springy day. But yeah, welcome to our final wellbeing session that we've got running. We are Northampton Film Festival. We also run the Creative Place. And one of our supporters this year for the Creative Place has been Click Arts Foundation. And very kindly, as well as supporting the Creative Place, where we try and get creatives to come together, learn new things, generally do things that benefit them. They've also very kindly, well, Dr Audrey Tang has very kindly donated her time to give us some wellbeing sessions that are particularly, well, I think they're particularly pertinent for creatives, obviously, I'm sure, for anyone in life. Recovery from setbacks, which is what we're going to talk about today. I mean, if you're a creative and you don't have any setbacks, I need to meet you and find out what you're doing, because every creative we meet has setbacks. That's just the nature of putting yourself out there and doing something exciting. So today, hopefully, we're going to learn a little bit about how to recover from them. Before I bring Audrey in, I just want to say that if you are watching live, then you can put questions in the chat underneath the video, and we'll tackle those at the end. Obviously, you can just watch, and if you're watching this again recorded, lovely. Thanks for joining us later on in time. But without further ado, let's bring Audrey in. Hi, Audrey. How are you?
Hey, Becky. Thanks for having me. Really well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. I think I'm on a bit of a kind of cloud nine, kind of just having finished the film festival, but I think there's also, and I don't know what you're going to talk about exactly today, but I think there's also a bit of, living on cloud nine, that we've finished the film festival, it's been the biggest and best ever, and that's lovely. There's also little things that stick in my mind that I go, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, or I wish that had gone better, or whatever else. And I'm sure overthinking might be something that comes up about those setbacks. But yes, without further ado, I think I'm going to leave you to it. I have my pen ready. So yeah, off you go.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. There are so many different ways to take a session on bouncing back from setbacks, because failure is an inevitable part of life. I mean, we never learned to walk without failing for the first time. So it's something that everyone has to go through at some point. We don't need to like it, but we also don't need to make it worse for ourselves. So that was sort of one thing. I wanted to probably start by thinking about what failure is, what failure means to us, and also how to manage some of those negative and intrusive thoughts that Becky's just mentioned as well, that go through our head whenever we experience failure, but also look at how we can manage our emotions and how we can come out of that sort of slump. But before I start, it kind of backs onto what Becky was saying about the film festival. It was brilliant. I absolutely enjoyed it. It was such a privilege to be part of it. And there's something that we also don't talk about that leadership is now beginning to recognize, and that is what we can learn from success as well. And there's only two questions you need to ask yourself when it comes to learning from success, because exactly as Becky said, we will feel, oh, we're on cloud nine. That was amazing. That was so good. And then we might jump to the bits, oh, what went wrong, all those things. And then we focus on that. Or if nothing went wrong, we'll just kind of go, okay, it was brilliant, move on to the next project. But actually, the two questions you need to ask yourself, number one is, how much of that success was down to my action? Not as in my ego, hey, I'm so brilliant, but how much of that success was down to something that I could physically control? And that kind of leads to the second question, which is how much of that success can therefore be replicable? And those two questions, if you ask yourself that after a successful project, you are more likely to have more successes. Because the danger that all the leadership studies have pointed out is if we go along and go, well, hey, that was absolutely brilliant, and we don't reflect on which bit of that was me and brilliant, it was controllable and brilliant, which bit of that was luck, which bit of that was weather, which bit of that was the fact that there was no traffic, or all of those things outside our control. And if we get too complacent on, again, not on ego, but on thinking, oh, hey, that was success, was everything was just brilliant, and that's because of everything we did, that's when we can go wrong. So we just need to ask ourselves, when we succeed, is how much of that was under my control and therefore how much of that can be replicable, and then replicate those things that you can replicate next time. But let's move on to failure. What does failure actually mean? Well, the dictionary says it is just the act or instance of not succeeding. It's not really very helpful. So let's look at success. Success is the achievement of a goal. Also not very helpful, except if you're a psychologist, because this is where things get a bit awkward for clients, and in my experience, what people come to me to talk about. Success to somebody may be likes, it may be popularity, it may be titles. And because that is somebody else's marker of success, and we look at that and we go, oh, that's what I need to be doing, and then we don't achieve it, we can feel like a failure, but that may not have been the best goal for us in the first place. So let's always dial it back when we think about what is success for ourselves. It is the achievement of a goal. What that goal is needs to be right for you and clearly defined for you. And that's why when it comes to setting goals, we tend to use the acronym SMART. So that's the good place to start, is using SMART. Most of us know this. Most of us know SMART goals. They have to be specific. So it's not simply, I want to get likes on my post. It might be, I want to get 1,000 likes on my post. Be specific. And relating to that, be measurable. You have to know what success looks like. Otherwise, how will you know you've got there or not got there? And very often, and I had this conversation with a client recently, they talked about always feeling like a failure. And in their head, they'd said, I'd always just got so far and then never got far enough. And that to them makes them feel like a failure. And when they were explaining it to me, they gave me an example, and they were a musician and they got to second chair, but not first chair. And that was the example. So, we pulled that apart a little bit, and I asked a little bit more about that. And it turned out, actually, they did get to first chair. They just didn't feel like it was a success when they were there. That's different. Okay. So success and goals are objective, that you have achieved them or you haven't. How you feel about them, that's different. And that's another area I need to get into, and I will get into before the end, because the fact that we may really succeed and feel like a failure, or we may fail and feel like a success, or we may fail and feel like all of those things, the reality might be really different to the mentality. So let's focus first of all on the objective bits, the goals, and these can be measured. And objectively, whether you feel like it or not, whether you feel you lucked it in or whatever it is, you're still, if you've achieved it, you have succeeded at that objectively. So your goal is, it needs to be specific, to be very clear with what you're trying to achieve, know what it looks like. You might want to think about what it might hopefully feel like when you get there. Most people feel relief. There's a little tip. They don't necessarily feel happy or well, hey, I'm amazing. They go, oh, thank goodness it didn't go wrong. That's something, as I say, emotions and what's objectively true don't always sit well together. But specific, measurable, achievable for you. So this is where I come back to this whole thing about I need 1,000 likes on my post. Maybe you do, but maybe that's not achievable for you yet, because it might be on that platform you're not that well known. So for me, if I wanted more than 3 likes on something, I would probably post it either on my personal Facebook page where it's just my friends, or on somewhere like LinkedIn, where I have a much better, broader reach. Instagram, I'm just lucky if it turns up in front of someone, and I really am lucky if they like it. So make sure it's achievable for you, not achievable for someone else, achievable for you. And with that, keep it realistic. So achievable for you is one thing, but also it's got to be realistic in the bigger scheme of things. That means realistic in terms of your time frame. in terms of the commitment you're going to put in terms of all of the other things that make up our complex lives. And finally, timely. Timely is the T. You need to know by when you are going to achieve it. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Set your goal, make it smart, and then when you achieve it, because you've set a certain time to achieve it by, well done, you've achieved it. How much of that was down to me? How much of that is replicable? That's your process for objective goals. However, of course, it doesn't always work that way. And now I started, when I was planning this particular talk, to look at bouncing back from setbacks. But of course, I've spent my whole book, The Leader's Guide to Resilience, talking about how we don't want to bounce back. We don't want to go back to where we were. We actually want to spring forward after setbacks. Because if we go back to where we were, we end up back in the position that probably caused the setback in the first place. I know that's just me being facetious with words, but in resilience research, there are 4 ways we can come out of a setback. 1, we can absolutely succumb to it. So something bad can happen and that can just bring us completely, can break us. And that's horrible. That's a horrible, horrible space. And this is not the space to talk about that. That is a therapeutic space. That is a medical, clinical space. But that is one thing that can happen to us. We can succumb to it. The second thing that research says, we can survive, but we may be injured. That usually means we might need to, well, might be physically injured, but it might mean if it's psychological, we might need to go through therapy and so on. We may need a lot more support to get back to where we were. And well, literally get back to where we were, and then even more support to move forwards. Third thing is actually we get through it. We are resilient. We bounce back. We go, okay, that was bad. Now I'm back. But actually there's a 4th outcome, and this outcome is much more positive, and it's the one that I really, really like, and the one I encourage my students and my clients to focus on, and that is thriving. What have we learned through that setback or failure that means we now have the conditions to do better? There is an area of resilience research that looks at adversity as creating the conditions to thrive in future. See it a little bit like, and this is the example they use, but I think it's a really good one, chickenpox. So you've heard, if you're a parent, you know of the chickenpox parties. It's the one where one child has chickenpox and you go, yeah, can you all come round? So my child gets chickenpox and then we've all got chickenpox over and done with, and we can all move on with our lives, because it creates an immunity. Your cells change, your body changes, and you become immune in future, which means that because if you get chickenpox as an adult, it's far more dangerous than getting it as a child. And resilience and adversity works in the same way. If you have a failure, you don't have a failure party. Let's all fail together. Or you might. But if you have a failure, you don't necessarily break. But what does happen is you begin to understand what went wrong. You might have learnings. You might have reflections that you would not have been afforded had everything gone smoothly. So failure is at the very least an opportunity. And that's something to start with. Failure is an opportunity. However, with the pain of failure, it's really difficult to see it as such. So these are some things that you can do. Number 1, find a safe space to grieve. So 1 is grieve, and do so in a safe environment. Grieving is it's for the achievement that you wanted to have or could have had, or the life that maybe you'd already planned for yourself if you'd had it. So you are allowed to feel bad. It's a horrible thing, and it's okay. We can accept that and hold it. The dangerous thing is when we start pushing that away and trying not to think about it, because that suppresses those feelings. And we end up doing all kinds of things to stop feeling bad. Whereas actually, if we allow ourselves to just feel bad, it will pass. Bad feelings are like clouds in the sky. You're the sky. The sky remains constant. The clouds will pass, and sometimes they become like dense fog and hang about for a while. But when they go, and they will go, you're still the sky. So grieve, feel it, allow yourself to do it. I subscribe to 24 hours of wallowing and I put the limit on it. 24 hours of just feeling bad. You know, if you need to eat your Ben and Jerry's, then do it. But 24 hours, allow that for yourself. Don't succumb to guilt as well as feelings of sadness and frustration and anger. Allow yourself that time, and do so with people who are supportive or on your own. Because unfortunately, everybody has an opinion, and some opinions, whilst they may be perfectly valid, may not be helpful to you at the time. So when I say grieve and do it in a safe space, try not to do it on social media. And certainly try not to do it in a one of those I forget the word, sort of cryptic, that's the word, cryptic messages. You'll never guess what happened, ... It's irritating. That's the first thing, is irritating. And secondly, actually, when you do that, your really good friends, the people who would support you, the people who will come around and, you know, and really be there for you, probably feel a bit, oh, well, they've posted it on social media. They don't really need my advice. And I certainly don't give it when people do that on social media. They want to message me privately and talk about it. Absolutely. I will always have time for that. So be careful. Know your etiquette. So with that grieving, create or know your network. Create a supportive network. Now, with this network, it is not toxic positivity. I'm going to ask you this question. What is your automatic response? This is something you can think of yourself. What is your automatic response if someone comes up to you and goes, oh, I'm so crappy, I'm so bad, I'm so stupid because of whatever you failed at? What's your first response? Majority of people will try and make that person feel better. The first response, and it comes from a place of love, when someone goes, oh, I'm so rubbish, is, no, you're not. You're lovely. You're amazing. And then they give you all of these list of things which tell you why they believe that you are not that. That's toxic positivity. And I hate saying that because it comes from a place of love. And I know you're not doing it in that way. But what that's done is it has invalidated that person's right to feel bad. You've now taken away their grieving. I've already said we need to let those emotions out. They have chosen to let those emotions out, and they've come out as, I feel crappy. I am crappy. I'm so bad at stuff. That's okay. Let that out. The response when someone comes up to you, when saying something like that, when you're trying to help them, is, I'm really sorry to hear that. Why? Tell me more. Tell me about it. Yeah, give them some summer loving. But I'm not trying to make light of it. But if you jump straight to, no, you're not, and this is why, you've not allowed them to grieve. You've taken away one of the most important aspects of healing. Failure is an injury. Whether it's an emotional, moral, physical injury, it's an injury. We need to let those feelings out. We need to hurt for a bit. And it's okay, because that's how we start to heal. Then we can actually find some coping mechanisms and ways of managing. Now, this is a technique. You can try this, but don't do this right at the point when you're feeling bad, okay? Grieve in the safe space, let that emotion out. Then when you're ready to learn, that's when you're going to try this exercise. And apologies if you've heard it before, but it's a really nice one to talk about how to bounce back and how to recover from failure. Be aware of the activating event. That's what A stands for. What triggered it? What was the trigger? What was the trigger for those things happening? Okay. Be aware of the activating event. What was the activating event that happened? What was the act that happened, that occurred? What was the behavior or the belief, that's B, after that act occurred? So it might be the act was, let's talk about the film festival. It was such a thrill, really, to be up for best film in our category for our charity single. The activating event that could have made me feel like failure, it didn't, but it could have, was, we didn't win. We didn't win. Oh my goodness, we didn't win. So the act was, we didn't win something. The belief or behavior could immediately be belief, oh, I'm rubbish, I'm useless, I can't make films, all of those sorts of things. The behavior, worse still, is, well, I better give that up then. I'll never enter that again. I won't do that. Or it could be, oh, well, the judges were stupid. Oh, it could be all kinds of different things. But be aware of what your individual response is to that particular activating event, that particular action. What's the event? What's the behavior? But then, this is the important bit, what are the consequences of that? So, didn't win. I'll never enter a film festival again. Well, that takes away a huge amount of pleasure and creativity. That's the consequence. If I never do that again, or I'll never work with those people again, or I'll never enter this film festival. It takes away so many possible elements or pathways of pleasure. And actually, if we begin to just think in that very negative way, we may never learn what actually happened. So the D is dispute it, or what can we do differently? Well, one thing we can do is, watch the film that won, speak to the filmmakers who are winning, talk to the judges, get feedback if possible. That's not always possible, but do something different, dispute those beliefs. The E is separate. I'll get to the E in a minute. But this is the process that we can use to address that automatic thinking when something goes wrong. Reflect on that activating event, whatever that was. Think about our beliefs and behaviors that come out of it. What are the consequences of going through with those behaviors and beliefs? Do something different. And what does the E stand for? Well, that comes from positive psychology. Now, positive psychology, that was because I was choking, not because I think positive psychology is weird. I love positive psychology. I think I was a positive psychologist before it became a thing. So what positive psychology says is, it's all very well to teach this, but everyone goes, whilst they're watching the session, yeah, let's write it down. That's absolutely what I'm going to do. And then failure happens, and then we don't do this at all. We just wallow and we go and post it on social media. The E helps us create a positive frame of mind, which makes us more likely to do the positive thing. So what this means is the E stands for energizers. It stands for stuff we do outside failure. And unfortunately, in so many ways, when things are going well for us, we don't look after ourselves because we go, oh, everything's great. Only at the point of crisis do we suddenly go, oh, I best do something. It's a bit like, I now at least have exercise into my regular routine. Otherwise, I turn up at my osteopath when I've thrown my back out, and she says, well, what do you do? Well, I sit in a chair all the time and don't do any exercise. And then suddenly, after I've seen her, I might exercise for 2 weeks. I don't do it anymore because I feel better. And then I throw my back out again. So the energizer keeps our mind and body and our neurochemistry functioning in that positive way, which means that when stress happens, failures happen, we don't produce so much cortisol, the stress hormone. We also are in a position where if we do produce cortisol, it goes back to normal a lot faster. And that has consequences, knock-on effects for things like our eating habits, our digestion, our sleeping habits, and so on. So it's really helpful to do energizers. But of course, what are they? Anything that makes you feel good. That's up to you. Anything that makes you feel good. It might be keeping a vision carousel of all of those moments which were wonderful, or the moments that make you smile. And people might do this, but it's on their phone and it's difficult to do. I've got to get my phone out there. I've got to find the pictures. Maybe you just have a collage somewhere. So memories that just trigger that positivity. Another thing might be gratitude practice. And I know gratitude practice has one of those reputations of, oh, I've got to get a journal and I've got to write it all down. No, if you've been to any of my sessions before, you will know this, and we're going to do this exercise because this exercise takes less than 15 seconds, and we can do this every single day. You can do it whilst you're brushing your teeth. You can do it whilst you're sitting on your chair. Just stretch out your arms and think about one thing you're grateful for in your life. And if you can't think of anything, at least think about air or water or a roof over your head. Any of those things, really important. You know, I might think about my bed. That's something I'm really grateful for. So something you're really grateful for, stretch out your legs next and think about someone you're really grateful for in your life. It might be a pet. It's okay. It doesn't have to be a person. And then shake out. And then think about one thing you're looking forward to doing today after this session, or that went really well for you today, whatever that was, no matter how tiny, no matter how tiny. See, simple, done. That's your gratitude practice. Do it enough times, and actually you begin to change the pathways in your brain. You start priming your mind to look for the positive. It starts priming your mind not to release so much cortisol when you're under pressure. It gives you an emotional workout. And the other thing it does, which I really like, is that if you practice that enough times, you will see patterns. You will see things and likely people who come up a lot in your gratitude practice, and people who do not. What I then suggest you might want to do is actively choose to spend time with the people who come up in your gratitude practice, which means that when the ones who don't come up in your gratitude practice quite so much start going, oh, can I see you for this? Or can I do this? And you can say, no, I'm so sorry. I'm already busy. And that way you've protected your energy a little bit. It's just a thought. And just as an example, this can work in the workplace as well. So Becky, for example, is one of the people who always comes up in my professional gratitude practice. And so it means that I'm always happy to do anything if Becky wants me to do it. It's yeah, of course, I'm happy to do it. And when I'm committed to that, it's very easy for me to tell people. And I do have, I think I've mentioned it before, I have a not today Satan folder in my emails. It's much easier for me to then say to people I don't want, I'm so sorry, I'm already doing something. I'm already at the film festival. I'm already, I was actually, funnily enough. So thank you, Becky. So that's your E, energizers, things that you can do to make you feel good throughout. And that keeps you more likely to not fall into a weird or difficult place. However, it isn't necessarily as easy as that. So these are some of the other things that you can do. These are, we don't necessarily need to write these next ones down, but they are things that can be helpful. One is reflect on how far you've come. And it might be one of those things. So just use my charity single. If I was really upset, one thing I can look at was, well, that's just our second charity single we've ever done. I mean, it's something I've always wanted to do for years and years and years, is to release a song. I mean, not me personally. You really don't want to hear me sing personally, but and we did it. We did it year before last year, and we did it last year. We done it twice now. We're going to do it again. That's exciting, because we've never done that before. So reflect on how far you've come. And also, if you want to get a bit deeper with that reflection, reflect on how you might have reacted had that happened to you last year. Look at how you've grown. That's helpful too. And that can make us feel quite good about ourselves. So consider those things. Then a couple of other things that we need to do to just keep that kind of safe space. Don't be afraid to say no to things. Sometimes when something fails or when we fail, it can actually be because we have just spread ourselves way too thinly. And that maybe means we need to take a step back and really think about why that happened. And if you are a bit of a people pleaser, that's gonna not help you, because you're only going to feel good once you've said yes to something. And that feeling of dopamine is going to die out very, very quickly. And then you're going to be left with, oh no, how am I going to fit that in amongst doing this, that, and the other, and all the other things? And then you don't do a great job, and then it feels awful. So here are a few boundary setting phrases that I'd like you to practice. Number one, I call these my love yourself, actually, phrases. You see why? You imagine Silent Night in the background. So these are the phrases. How can I best help you? How can I best help you? So somebody's asked you to do something, and instead of going, yes, and doing it straight away, throw it back at them. How can I best help? I'll give you a good example of this. I want you to think about what you would automatically do if I just said, oh, it's a bit cold. I'm a bit cold. I asked this in a training session 2 weeks ago, and it was a webinar, but everyone, I said, put in the chat, everyone said, oh, I'd turn up the thermostat, I'd close the window, I'd get you a jacket. And actually all I'd said was, oh, I'm a bit cold. I hadn't said anything specific, but already people had put themselves out to try and solve that problem. Actually, the best thing to do is ask, okay, right, I hear you. How can I help you? What would you like me to do? And that is an important thing because it throws the onus and the ownership of the situation back on that person. And it also means when you make the effort to do something, it's more accurate because you've asked what they want from you. If you're a people pleaser, this is one of your best friends. Number two, signpost them. I'm sorry, I can't help you, but so-and-so might be able to. I do that quite a lot because I deliver sessions like this and then people want to come to me for therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a clinician. That's not my PhD. I'm a workplace psychologist. My PhD was on burnout in the workplace. So as much as I can talk about and I understand well-being, I've written books on it, I am not a clinical therapist. And so I will always say, well, I'm sorry, I can't help you, but I will recommend you to somebody else or recommend the places that you can look. So signpost people. And that way you're not letting them down. You are still being helpful, but you're also not spreading yourself too thinly. This one's a nice one. I can do that, but I can only do it at X time. Or I can do that, but I can only do it between this time and that time. So again, set your boundaries. Set your boundaries. That's really important because this is the thing when, can you help me move house? And maybe you feel bad if you don't want to help somebody, but if you can't give up your whole day, you can't give up your whole day. And don't forget, chances are other people have also said no. So, you're already being nice. I can help you, but only at that time. This is also really good for the workplace where people go, oh, can I just borrow you for 5 minutes? And you know it's only going to take them 5 minutes to explain it, but it's going to take you an hour to do it. So yeah, we can do that. We can do that 5 o'clock. That's what we can do. And the last one, this is my favorite one. If people ask you, oh, could you do this for me on that day? And you don't know whether you want to do it or not, I'll tell you later, I don't have my diary. In fact, that's a good thing to check with anyway. It's a good phrase to use regardless of whether you want to do something or not. But if you are unsure, and I always say to people, don't agree to something when you're in a good mood, because you may well regret it later on. Saying to someone, buying yourself time, I'll tell you later, I don't have my diary, allows you to think about, do I really want to do this or not? Have I actually got the time to do this or not? And I had to do this recently. I was asked to do something which I would have really loved to have done. But because of the commitment I would have to put into it in order to do it to the standard I would want to do it, I had to say no. And so these are the things that we do have to be aware of, because all that will otherwise happen is we will let ourselves down. We will set ourselves up to fail. So that's why our boundaries are so important. So learn to say no. And no is a complete sentence. Okay. Ask for help. Ask for help. Every therapist, and I know I'm not a therapist, but everyone is likely to be able to tell you, if you just bottle it up and bottle it up and bottle it up and bottle it up, you will just explode. And then that's not going to be pretty, because that might result in having a real sort of outburst at someone who you then regret having that outburst out, and it might be difficult to pick up the pieces and so on. So ask for help. Reach out. Ask somebody. how they managed to do it, or even who they could recommend to you. And when you reach out and ask for help, just because somebody says no doesn't mean it's personal. So that's the other thing about failure or rejection. Try not to take it personally. It might just be, as I said, that person, maybe it is personal, but it may also be that person just doesn't have time. If we take everything personally, what we risk doing is ending up having a very overly emotional response to a fundamentally neutral situation. And that can be really hard for us, and actually quite hard for the person who really probably was trying to be very nice in letting you down gently. And that can damage relationships. Now, I said I'd go into the emotional bit afterwards. I will. But let me finish these bits off first. So think about the different perspectives you can take as well when you feel rejected or when something doesn't go as you were hoping it would. There will be many, many reasons why. Remember, I said right at the start, why don't leaders learn from success? And that's because they go, oh, everything was great. If you can work out when it comes to failure, which bits were under your control, those are the bits you have so much power, because those are the bits you can work on. If there were things that were out of your control, then maybe you just have to do things like, oh, we plan it at a different time, or we do it in a different space, or those are other things, but those were just not in your control. Should you have known about them? Well, maybe that's a learning point. But these are the things that you might need to break down, and you need the safe space in order to do that. And here are some other tips. If we can, try to get a bit more compassionate with ourselves. Now, I don't want to go too deep into the sort of clinical or psychotherapy side of things, but sometimes the reasons why we may feel failure so badly may be because our whole upbringing, before we even had any choice, may have been rooted in success. So what I mean by that is, for some of us, our upbringing may have been such that when we succeeded, we felt loved and safe and wanted and praised and all of those things. But when we failed, we might have been told things like, you know, you got 98%. Well, where's the other 2%? Or, oh, well, you're not as good as so-and-so's son or daughter because they got 100%. That lasts. That stuff lasts. Gabor Male wrote the book, The Body Holds the Score. Body Keeps the Score, I think it is actually. The Body Keeps the Score. Those things, unfortunately, if they happen to us at the time where our brains and our bodies, they're just forming in our formative years when we're very young, and that's the pattern that we've got used to, we take that on board. And it becomes becomes embedded in our DNA. We become that. And that sometimes needs a lot of therapeutic support to break. But I bring it up now just to say that sometimes if failure or one type of failure feels more painful to you, maybe ask yourself why. Are you particularly sensitive to that type of failure? I'll give you an example of how this plays out. I used to, in one of my many past careers, I used to teach teaching assistants. And we were talking about ethics and morals and how to enforce rules and regulations. And one teaching assistant got very, very emotional when she was talking about telling off a boy who was racist to another. Now, I'm not condoning racism in any way, shape, or form. But if a child had cheated, which is also bad, she wouldn't have got quite so triggered by it. And we had to explore that a little bit. And it turns out there's a whole wound in there that she was trying to heal from. And so if some failures hit you harder than others, take a moment and engage curiosity. Why? Why has that hit me harder? What is that feeling triggering in me? And then practice a little bit of self-compassion. Now, self-compassion is there to make us feel better. It's not to do with forgetting failure or not learning from it. It just gets our body into the safe state that it can actually then begin to learn. Now, a lot of self-compassion, a lot of people think self-compassion is about going, oh, you know, I'm just going to look after myself and it's very selfish. No. And neither does it make you lazy. It just simply means that if your inner voice is more used to self-criticism, that is a great motivator. It's just not the best motivator out there. And research has shown by the people who really work on self-compassion. If you want to know more, Dr. Kristin Neff is really good at she's one of the founders of self-compassion. Paul Gilbert's the other one. What research has shown is that if people are self-compassionate and they go, okay, you know, we didn't win, but we showed up. We put in a good entry, and I'm pleased with that. If you just take it at that kind of minimizing some of those huge emotions that we can feel, understanding, accepting, maybe not minimizing is not the right word, accepting some of those huge feelings, and then just going, it's okay. It's okay to feel like that. It's okay to feel like that. What research has actually shown is those people who practice self-compassion rather than self-criticism being you're stupid, you're rubbish, you can't do it. They were more motivated to actually look at what they could improve on. So all I'm saying is self-compassion and self-criticism are kind of two sides of the same coin. Both will motivate you. But if you think about it objectively, which boss would you rather work for? The boss that goes, okay, never mind, let's learn from that and push through. You showed up, we did a good job, but let's learn from it. Or the one that goes, oh, you're rubbish. You're absolutely useless. So if we would prefer the boss that's a little bit more compassionate, we are our own boss. That inner voice is our own boss. So maybe try and use self-compassion. Now, other things that we can do to help us sort of cope when we're feeling bad is use a little bit of self-compassionate touch. Now, this is one form. You can try this with me. Form of self-compassionate touch is just stroking, gentle strokes down the arm. Or alternatively, and these are Dr. Kristin Neff, these are her tips, holding both cheeks in your hands, cupping your face. These are all things that parents are likely to have done. And tapping, that can also help. And one thing, which if you're watching this now, and I'd like you to give this a go, because this was a huge revelation to me, is rocking backwards and just a toe, heel. Now, actually, there's a good reason for that to make us feel good. I'm going to stop doing it because it's going to make you feel seasick. But it's quite pleasant to do. The scientific reason is that it engages our sense of proprioception and our sense of balance. And that act of getting back to balance actually feels very reassuring. The funny thing is, and I say this especially to creatives, is we as directors, as actors, as dancers, as filmmakers, guaranteed will have spent our whole lives going, stand still, just move your hand, just walk, stop rocking, stop swaying. And because we're so conscious of that, we don't do it ourselves. I absolutely don't. In my public speaking sessions that I deliver, I tell people, if you can't stop swaying, hold on to the lectern, hold on to the back of a chair, just stop swaying, because it makes people feel seasick. And it does when you are presenting. However, that can get so ingrained in us that we actually miss out on something that is really, really calming and good for us and brings about that sense of relaxation. And in that sense of relaxation, it's a safe space to feel the emotions. It's a safe space to start working through things. We can be missing out on that. So, especially if you're creative, try rocking. Just not whilst you're teaching or directing or acting or dancing or singing or all of those things. All right. The other thing to think about is maybe taking a social media break. And that's not just taking a break from comments on your own post or situation, but just taking a break from the other accounts. Because sometimes other people's accounts are really, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm succeeding here, I'm succeeding. Yeah, of course they are. Somebody else's highlights reel. We generally put our successes down as well most of the time. I mean, I probably would do both. It's just that I really don't like going on social media. So I literally just post, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm really sorry if that makes people feel anxious. I genuinely am. But I just don't have time to post, and I don't like it. I don't really like the space, to be honest with you. I don't feel it's very safe. But anyway, taking a break from it can be really refreshing. And it's been shown, it's been proven psychologically, it can really make us focus on the negative. If we spend too long on there, we start comparing ourselves to others. And sometimes we start comparing ourselves to what isn't even real. And that's even worse. So taking a social media break can help. Reflect on the expectations that you had. Sometimes a failure may just be, I failed to do what I thought I would do. And so come back to the smart point again. Were those expectations realistic? Were they too easy? Or, is that why I don't feel I've achieved? So what might I do to adjust those expectations in the future? That can be really helpful to think about. And then the last point here is to view disappointment as a problem that needs to be solved. Address that issue, address what the failure was creatively. Well, how can I get around that? If that pathway is no longer open to me, what might be? And then who can I ask? How can I get support? Who can I learn from? All of those things become useful. But all of those things require an element of putting some of our ego away, because it's the ego really that feels bad, and recognizing that, yeah, we don't have to like it. We don't have to like it. But failure is part of life, and it is an opportunity to learn. So that kind of brings me to the end of what I wanted to say today. I'm very happy to take any questions if there are any, but otherwise I shall bring Becky back in for the last 10 minutes of Q&A.
Hello, thank you very much. I've written down lots of notes. Yeah,
it's an interesting subject because failure never, when we look at it, it's never really as bad as I think it feels.
No, yeah, and I think it was. I didn't know what your points were going to be, but I'm kind of relieved or something that grieving is there, because I think, you can also kind of leap to go, okay, well, I'm just going to be okay with this, and I'll learn something from it, and it'll be fine. But actually, it's nice to know that the official advice is that you can have that, you can have it,
and actually you must have it. And I'm actually glad you just brought that up, because this is where the different forms of therapy can become not problematic, but can become unhelpful, because you've got CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is all about processing. It's all about talking it through, working it through, but it isn't much about feeling. And so grieving is actually a lot more about feeling. And so what you end up happening, what you find is that some people who go to CBT, and I'm not saying it's not helpful, but what will happen is they'll go to it, but they're really good at processing anyway. So kind of they don't really need the therapist to do that with them. What they actually need to do is go to something like even a yoga class, or somewhere where you can feel and you're allowed to release that energy. That will make the difference to them. So that's the problem. You're absolutely right. It's very easy to go, all right, processing it, get over it, learn from it, move on. Whereas actually what we really need to do is feel it as well.
Absolutely. And then actually you said I was also, it's just, I'm just using this as an opportunity to talk about my notes now, but you're saying about the kind of gratitude, which is something that I try really hard to do, and I'm not very good at still. You said about thinking about a thing, a person,
and what you're looking forward to, or what went well. Either or.
Yeah.
It depends, because some people do it at night, some people do it in the morning. So it might be, if you're in the morning, what am I looking forward to today? Or if it's at night, what went well today?
Yeah.
Or what was
Nice.
nice today? Any of those things.
Well, yes, I'm in report writing stage of, because it's the end of the financial year, exciting times. And actually, it is though a really nice, even though a lot of people don't like writing reports, I actually like it. But it is a good way of reflecting and going, okay, actually, what did go well? And actually, yeah. And it can be hard in a moment to go, well, that just didn't work. But actually, when you kind of go through it all and you try and be a little bit more objective, you're like, oh no, I learned from that. We're not going to do that again. We're going to do something else. Yeah.
Exactly. And learning and curiosity, they're both very neutral. And I think that's important to recognize, because failure is so weighted. It's such a negative word. Success, weighted as well, such a positive word. Learning, curiosity, neutral, but both it's so helpful to learn from both sides.
Absolutely. Wow. And we don't have any questions. I feel like you gave us a lot, to be fair. There's a lot. I've read a lot of things. But yeah, it's great. And actually a really nice, we've got 3 of these that are now online. And it's a very nice, I'm always going to say kind of a full circle of finding your motivation again, setting your goals, which obviously you started this with. And then, recovering from when those things don't all totally pan out.
I mean, another thing actually I didn't add, which may be worth remembering, is sometimes failing fast is a good thing, because sometimes we actually do have to pivot or change direction before we just sink so much into something which is just simply not going to work for us. And that's okay too. So sometimes we can embrace failure as, well, okay, at least that's done. And I know that's not for me now.
Absolutely.
Before we commit too much to it. And it's the same thing when you're trying anything new. I was speaking about this just today on a show, and trying something new, you don't have to stick with it if you don't like it. We are adults. It's not like mum taking us to drama school and saying you have to stay there because I paid for a whole term. If we don't like it, we can go, not for me. So we need to sort of assert some of our agency as adults again.
Absolutely. Yeah, that one took me a little while to learn, to be honest. But yeah, and it's quite refreshing when you go, actually, I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exciting times.
Why? Because it's you've got all of these other almost expectations, or maybe you've even set up a bit of a precedent that you will do it. And if it's not working, then it is time to set those boundaries and even use the signposting. Really sorry, I can't do it, but check out these people. They might be able to help you. Don't stitch people up, but
yeah. But yeah, all of these great bits of advice. Well, thank you very much for giving up another one of your evenings for us. It is much appreciated.
No, you're so welcome. It's always a pleasure, really. It's good fun for me, and it's good practice for me, because this is what I do, and it's kind of nice to just keep that flowing as well.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure we will speak again soon. So if you are interested in finding out kind of more about Click Arts Foundation, which Audrey runs, you can check out their website here, clickartsfoundation.org.uk. And I'm sure there's lots of stuff on there about Audrey and the whole of the team. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, if you're watching this now, you can watch all the others on our YouTube as well, from the previous sessions. And yeah, hopefully we will see lots of you engaging with us again soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.